Clay, I don't mean to be blue right out of the gate here, but let's find that patron who told us about the Romulans.
Unbelievable.
String them right up by the balls. I'm assuming this is a male person. Who's
Unbelievable.
Not a male man, not a male lady, but a
not
male
a postal worker.
Not a postal worker. Although they brought the news, apparently.
Yeah, they delivered some bad news and just ruined the episode completely. How was I supposed to objectively watch this when I knew the whole time that the final 15 seconds were going to reveal some forehead bumps?
15 seconds, 15 frames. 15 frames packed with meaning. All right, so here's a good thing. I only learned this from Memory Alpha. Do you realize that the Romulan is a character we'd seen in the episode before that?
Oh no, I would not. Wait, is it the guy, the desk clerk that he sends off to kill whoever?
No, it's the guard who says that he served with T'Pol. That's that guy.
The guard who said he served with T'Pol?
There's the guard who captures T'Pol, and he's like, what happened to you? I remember we served during the Tomed incident. It's that guy. He's the Romulan at the end, which I would not have picked up on in a million years, except for Memory Alpha points that out. This is like a weird production note. It was intended originally to be a all new character, an original character, but they did not have the budget. So they just made a character who had previously been in the episode. They didn't have to pay the actor, basically, so they just cast him as the Romulan at the end. Makes no difference, and it's a weird thing. But I was curious if you would have caught up on that, because I was sort of flabbergasted. I was like, I don't even know if they tried to make that point, that's a guy that you would recognize.
Is it the same character, or is it just the same actor? Because I feel like
character.
It really is supposed to be the same character.
The character has the same name as both of those characters.
Oh, okay. Because I could see them just saying, he's the same actor. Put some bumps on his forehead. No one's going to give a shit. Well, nobody will be able to tell. But if it's literally the same character, sure. I mean, I did assume, knowing what I knew going in, when those guys showed up, those two guards showed up to beat up Archer and T'Pol and T'Pow.
They were dressed T'Pow, actually. Yeah, needs a little more Batman animated logos over the
T'Pow. They were dressed differently, and I was like, oh, they kind of feel like they're dressed like Romulans now. But
there's the Romulans. I knew they were coming. Yeah, it's the same guy. His name is Taylock, I guess, or Talak,
Taylock,
or something like that. Taylock, yeah.
Just Dolene Taylock.
I don't know. Let's get into it. We're going to be talking about where did it go? Oh, I switched the screen because I had to look up Taylock, but it's the same guy. We're going to be talking about Kir'Shara. It's the 9th episode of the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise. Came out on December 3rd, 2004, an early Christmas present for all Star Trek fans. Arc is 3 of 3 in the Syrannite's arc, 7 of 7 in the Vulcan versus Andorian arc. Written by Michael Sussman, directed by David Livingston.
Does that mean it's the last time we're going to see Shran?
No, he comes back, but it's not against the Vulcans. This is the last hostilities between the two of those two. Directed by David Livingston. In-universe date is not known, but specifically, but it's 2154. In this episode, Kir'Shara, Archer, and T'Pol endeavor to expose to an ancient Vulcan artifact to Vulcan society, while the Enterprise becomes involved in a standoff between Vulcan and Andorian fleets. It's the end of the Syrannite arc. We've had 3 lovely episodes on sunny Vulcan. We got our Tans developed. We found some totems. We met some Vulcans. We met different sects of Vulcans who I'm not really even still sure what the difference between any of the sects are, but we did meet a bunch of different people. What'd you think of the conclusion to this arc, Kir'Shara?
I thought it was about as note-cardy of a wrap-up as you could get. And what I mean by that is it just kind of felt like they were just tying things off. Like I didn't find anything surprising about it. Everything kind of ended the way you thought it was going to end. Or at least that way I kind of like. I didn't find anything.
You called
surprising
T'Pol's
about
marriage falling apart. You predicted that.
Big time. Yeah, it just felt like it was just sort of a box ticking story. Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, I was pretty underwhelmed by this trilogy of episodes. I think I prefer the Augments one, even though like this is maybe like slightly better across the board as like a batting average type thing. Like this is maybe a better production than the Augments one, because the Augments one has some like really goofy moments and some real problems. But I thought the Augments one at least tried to do. It didn't always flesh it out or really fulfill a lot of the stuff it was bringing up, but I thought that the ideas in the Augments were more interesting than what was going on here. I don't think there's really any ideas in this Vulcan trilogy.
No.
There's nothing that's like... I got to the end of it, and I'm still of the opinion, if you made this Vulcan episode, if you took all the Vulcans in this and made it some new alien race we'd never met before, outside of them constantly mentioning Logic and Surrak, I don't think there's anything here that I go, yeah, this is Vulcan culture. Like this feels right to me. I continue to be on this horse of I don't think this is right.
You mean it didn't feel like Vulcan culture when T'Pol was like, we need to get a doctor, and then T'Pau was like, we don't need a doctor, we need a priest.
That was bad. I didn't like the dramatic close-ups of the guy at the end when he was like, tell them to fire. And he's like, people Vulcans are screaming and yelling and shit. And it's like, what the hell is going on? So let's stick on this for a minute. I was reading, because I'm very confused about what to think about this, because people generally like this arc. And I was reading reviews. Jammer likes this thing. I was reading Darren Mooney's review. And Darren, to me, it argues against a thing that I think is kind of a straw man, or it's at least not the argument that I would make here, which is that he would argue that the Vulcans in Enterprise, and specifically this episode, are in line with how Vulcans have been portrayed as jerks in previous series, which I would agree with. I think that Vulcans generally, outside of Spock, are portrayed as holier than thou, and if they're not holier than thou, their logical, rational attitudes rubs people the wrong way because they don't spare feelings when they talk in other series. Like they will state the truth, or they will state what they think is going on to people because they are, as a species, not concerned with the emotional aspect of things. They just tell you the information.
And they'd be a lot more popular. They'd be a lot more popular if they ended every statement with, I'm just telling it like it is. Because if you say that, it doesn't matter what you say before that. It's like saying, like, with all due respect, and then you tell somebody something awful about them.
Surrak's hologram, the Kir'Shara, should have just said that in a like a rotating text.
It's just a stand-up bit from the 70s. And that's why I'm just telling it like it is.
That's why he's the greatest Vulcan who ever lived. I think it's a little bit of... I'm sure there are some Star Trek fans who are arguing that point, that they kind of don't like the angriness of the Vulcans. I actually don't have that opinion. So if anyone thinks that my argument is that the Vulcans are angry, or that the Vulcans are jerks, and I don't like the fact that they're jerks, I would be totally fine with these guys just being jerks. I would totally be fine with a Vulcan jerky attitude towards Earth, which is kind of hinted at initially, that they are patronizing and they consider themselves superior and they're going to tell you what to do and be very condescending. That is not my problem with the Vulcan Enterprise Vulcans at all. My problem with the Enterprise Vulcans is that they have been hinting this entire time that something is wrong with them as a culture. Like that there is something that they will eventually change to become the Vulcans that you know later on. And I don't know, like, do you get the sense that this is intentional, or is this just bad casting and directing? Or is it that the Vulcans need to be somewhat emotional because it doesn't sell on TV to have them not be that way so consistently? That, like, if they're so prominent in a series, you kind of need to have them act emotionally just to give the scene something. I don't know what it is. I think this is a terrible portrayal of Vulcans because it doesn't make sense with what I expect that culture to be, and them playing them differently is never explained or justified narratively to the point where you go, okay, I understand why the show is doing this way. Even if I don't like it, at least I can understand where the bones of the story are coming from. I was totally shocked that, as far as I can tell, this trilogy doesn't explain the mindset of the Vulcans at all in this series. It doesn't do anything to justify why they are the way that they are.
No, I'm going to stick with what I have said up to this point, which is I don't know if the first 3 seasons of the show necessarily were playing the Vulcans as if they were intentionally different than the Vulcans that we know or traditionally. Mm-hmm. But these episodes definitely are retconning and course correcting to make them more in line with the Vulcans that everyone is more familiar with.
In what sense? How are they? Do you mean by the Syrannite and T'Pol? Do you mean just the logistics of having the Syrannite religion that's supposed to be like more true to the Vulcan ideology?
Yeah, and then they take over at the end, and like the last thing that she says to Archer is basically like, "Well, we're going to try and do things differently from now on. Hopefully it'll be all. We're going to let you guys hang out, and we're going to kind of do things the way we got to do." Like the intent seems that now that the Syrrannites are in power, things are going to change.
Yeah, which I would say is the note cardy aspect of what you were talking about. But what this arc more does is it connects this to the next series, which would be TOS, but it doesn't explain retroactively why the Enterprise Vulcans are the way that they are.
Yeah, I think these 3 episodes, they have gone out of their way to fix, quote unquote, these Vulcans, but in doing so, they have not come up with any reason as to why they were the way they were. And I don't know. I wonder if doing that, in doing that, you kind of have to admit that it was wrong or something, or like it's kind of dismissive of the work that came before if you specifically point out what was quote unquote wrong with the Vulcan portrayal. It does seem like it's a little bit of a half measure where they are course correcting, but they're also not making a stand as to whether or not or how the Enterprise Vulcans have been wrong.
Yeah. I would just love, I haven't had a good argument for someone who defends the portrayal here, and maybe there aren't a lot of people who defend the portrayal of the Vulcans, but I certainly don't hear it as a negative of the series, but I think it's, if you like, once you're aware of it and you watch this episode, every scene where a Vulcan talks, I'm sitting there going like, why don't they tell this guy to reel it in a little bit? Like, this is not what these guys are supposed to be. This
episode's difficult because you've got one of them is in a fucking brain melting chair for half the episode, so he's gonna he's fine. Specifically is, they say, targeting the suppression gland or some shit.
Yes, yeah. I don't know.
So it's okay for him to scream. Yeah, it's okay for him to have a freak out because they're targeting his suppression matrix or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got T'Pol having a slight freak out in the cave, but she's got her own fucking problems. She's probably still strung out from her rock snorting.
Yeah.
And then
her AIDS got cured this episode too, as a note.
Yes, that's true.
Card. Yeah.
Yeah. Another great retcon is that the Vulcan mind meld disease is just because she was doing it with someone who was bad at it.
You only get HIV if you have sex with someone bad at sex. That's the way it
works. I mean.
Honestly, they didn't even need to do that. I've completely forgotten about that.
Yeah,
I completely forgot that she had some mental disease. Yeah.
And you've got the leader of the High Council, who's a Romulan, so he's fine going over the top.
Is he a Romulan?
That's a good point. He might not be a Romulan. He might just be working with the Romulans because he didn't do a dramatic forehead rub and reveal the bumps on his makeup. But the other guy who is not, as far as we know, a Romulan and is just a regular Vulcan, is as equally as
the other
emotional
counselor?
and over the top. The other council guy. Yeah.
Okay.
The background actors are great because they don't say anything, so they just kind of stand there with the fascinating look on their face. But the one other guy that they paid to talk is kind of like at the same level as the what's his name, the actor's
Robert
name?
Foxworth or something, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. They're kind of almost on the same level, and if you're going by this metric of how Vulcans should act, there is really no excuse for him to be as over the top as he is. But that being said, it is still in line kind of with how they've been played up to this point. So
right. The problem, I think, is that the difference between the Syrrannites and the High Command Vulcans is not shown to be it's literally what we talked about before with the schism in Islam between the Sunni and the Shia is based on like an understanding of what the relationship to the next heir of Muhammad is supposed to be.
Sure.
And here it's not, they don't have different outcomes or different outlooks on logic. They don't have a like difference of opinion about what Surak was talking about. They never talk about that. The only difference seems to be that the High Command Vulcans want to bomb Andoria and the Syrrannites are peaceful people. And that seems to be
it's a metaphor, man. Allegory for real life. What's happening in the news, ripped from the headlines and rocketed 200 years into the future.
Into the future. History is cyclical. I don't think we'll have too many other options or chances to talk about it, I imagine, but I really have to stress how I hate the Vulcan portrayal here. And it's not just that they're emotional and that I can't handle them being different or something. They're different in a way that completely contradicts the species to this point that we've known, and it also serves no narrative purpose. They're just angry. And the final point about it is that to this point in the 4th season, no human character has ever said to any Vulcan character, "Why are you getting so upset?" They get upset all the time, and every human always just says, well, these Vulcans and their cold, heartless logic about things, but they're constantly getting upset with them. They're constantly raising their voice, getting frustrated, talking to Archer like he's an idiot, and like Archer can get the best of them emotionally because he can piss them off. Makes no sense. It should be the inverse. Archer gets more and more pissed off because they don't get upset when he's talking to them. That's the only way to play these guys. That's the only way that makes sense. And they just didn't do anything with it. It's really frustrating.
Well, I think part of the box ticking nature of this episode and ultimately the whole arc is the fact, like the first 2 episodes I kind of gave a little bit of leeway, and I don't know if it stood out as much as it did in this one because they were kind of setting stuff up so much and they were like, introducing this group and all these other esoteric Vulcan things. Like, okay, there's something they're doing here. Let's see where it goes. But by the time you get to this one, you're into the 3rd hour of this story, which is about these 2 disagreeing groups of Vulcans who theoretically are not warring with each other, but have like a fundamental disagreement that is detrimental to the people. And they, like you said, they don't talk about it at all. And so since the core of what there would have been to do in these episodes, they never do, what you're left with is just checking off boxes, getting to the point at the end where everything's back to normal. So you get instead of having scenes where there's some actual ideas flying around, you get a scene where T'Pol and T'Pau are like, man, Archer sure did a great thing, huh? And they're like, yep. But it's too bad it's hurting his brain. What are we going to do? Well, we got to get him a priest. Get that thing out of his brain. Yep, we got to do that. We got to get the spiky thing to the room, because once we get the spiky thing to the room, then the people will know. And it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, they'll know.
Cool. Great. Awesome. Fantastic. I'm happy you found the spiky thing. Like, what's the point of all this other than just get the spiky thing to the room? Right?
They don't even explain what the spiky thing says. The spiky thing is just a totem that the Vulcans, a logical society, treat with deeply religious reverence, even though it has not. They don't learn anything from it. They read the words, I guess, but it doesn't I don't know.
It's basically one of those like things that kids have that just put stars on the ceiling and spin around while you're sleeping. One of those planetarium things you can get. Because that's all it was. It was just a bunch of green. I mean, they're looking at it going, oh, it's the word of Sirach. It's like, sure, whatever the fuck that means. Who cares? Yeah. You know, but it's like who gives a shit? Yeah. No, this is all just business, MacGuffin business, like with every one of these plot lines. Well, we got to get to Andoria before the Vulcans get there because they think the Andorians secretly built a bunch of Xindi lasers, and here's a video of them blowing up a moon. Okay, I guess we got to stop that. We just spent an entire season stopping that, so I guess we should probably stop that again. Yeah, and it's all just business. There's nothing to any of it. It's just business for the sake of business, and it's like that's why I think the 9/11 references feel so fraught. Is because they're not in service of anything. It's just, isn't this like the news? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? And so, no, it doesn't make. All it makes me think is you couldn't come up with anything original. You've got these two, like these really interesting concepts of bunch of Vulcans who are hyper into logic, bunch of Vulcans who are into that, but not quite as much. And there's a power dynamic at play here, and maybe we should have a discussion as to why one of them may or may not be right, and who knows whether or not we even come up with an answer to that. But they don't do any of that. There's none of that whatsoever. There's like, even when they bring T'Pol to the High Council, which the High Council room looks exactly like Emperor Palpatine's room in the prequel trilogy in episode 3. It's like the exact same room. Yeah. It's even got that one window that Mace Windu gets blown out of. It's the exact same set. But even when like T'Pol gets brought there, there's no real like discussion about anything. Again, it's just like the spiky thing is a myth. We can't trust anyone who says they've got he's got the spiky thing and he's got their prophet in his brain. What is this? Yeah. What is this? A fairy tale?
We don't believe in fairy tales. What's going on here? She's a Syrannite.
You want me to turn around the entire fleet because he says he has the spiky thing, which is everyone knows it's a legend.
Who would walk down that hallway for long enough to find that thing? Not this guy. I think what...
Do you know how many turns there are in that hallway? You can't see around a single corner. You could whack your head. No one would dare.
I'm being told he brought a torch that completely shot our plans in the foot. I think that...
I dropped my keys down there once and I couldn't drive my car for 3 weeks. You know how hard it is to get a replacement set of keys on Vulcan?
It's quite illogical. Do you, Archer's fascinating.
Get the second set, they said. It's the logical decision, but what was logical to me was saving $50.
That's the Syrannite disagreement there about whether or not insurance is logical. Archer's interesting here because I think Archer's role is fascinating once you get to the end of this, and you were saying that no one has anything to really talk about. Archer's function across 3 episodes is to carry something. He carries the spirit of Sirach, and then he carries the pointy thing at the very end. Yep.
Well, he carries 2 things in the last one.
What does he carry? What's the? Oh, well, you mean Sirach?
He carries at the same time. Yes, that's very difficult.
A lot of heavy lifting. Yeah, but the most interesting scene I think with Archer happens in this one, where he talks about he feels more centered since he had the mind meld, and that he starts doing. Yeah. They're trying to cram an awful lot here into that. This is Archer coming to terms with the Vulcans in some way. Like this mind meld has opened his eyes to what the positives of Vulcan culture are in some ways. Mm-hmm. None of the rest of the 180 minutes has anything to say about this, but he just off the cuff because of this mind meld has this epiphany. But the main central character of the show carries things for 3 episodes. He has no agency. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't question the Syrrannites. He doesn't question the high command. Doesn't really question T'Pol. He's just a mellow dude carrying the spiky thing to the end of the goal line, and then he's going to spike it when he gets there. And it's like the show just really doesn't... my concern, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago, and now that we're starting to have comments on past episodes that have aired on YouTube, and like people are kind of filling in their thoughts, and we're ahead recording wise. There is like, I'm extremely concerned that this season is highly regarded because it's the fan service season. That they just connect dots to things, and it's like,
gotta find out what you gotta see the Wookiees' home planet, baby, before we get out of this. Get out of this one.
The way people were talking about it, I was just expecting to come in and this was going to be a great advance in Enterprise's storytelling, where they actually tied into previous stuff and they had things to say. The show, in my opinion, continues to not have anything to say, but it's definitely trying to connect canon dots between things, which to me is just not interesting. It's like, you can do this fantastically, and I'd still be like, all right, that's cool. I guess the spiky thing matters later on, you know?
Well, I think what's interesting to me is I do find the episodes of this season generally more. I think I understand it. I think I understand why that's the view, because when they're doing these multiple episode arcs, you've got 3 episodes that are, even if it's not the thing we want them to be driving towards, is driving towards something, right? Traditionally, these single episodes never quite really get off the ground in that, like, very rarely do you get 2 episodes back to back where it's like, oh, okay, they did something cool there. They really kind of got to the point. But with these 3 episode arcs into the 4th season, this show trucks along pretty well. Like, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong or bad about the production of this show. It looks pretty good. I think all the actors are good. You get to the end of, if anything, I think it might be getting a little infected by modern TV at this point, where you're kind of getting to the end of these episodes going like, oh, okay, that's interesting. See where this goes. Right. And you kind of forget that. Week. Yeah, you kind of forget that a lot of the stuff that got you there is just sort of like business. Mm-hmm. So if you've got these 3 episodes in a row that can get you into what's going to happen next, I think that's more effective, and that is going to stand out more than the traditional episodes where it's like, yeah, this time it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I do think, honestly, I think I could just be saying this because we are in the middle of season 4, but like, I find season 4 already more memorable than the other ones. I think probably because there are fewer stories. So there's like,
and we've only had
season
2
4.
so far,
yeah, I know, but still, it's we're what, 8, 9 episodes in or something, and it's like, so far we've done the Vulcan story, the what's the word I'm looking for here? Augment story, and the Man in the High Castle story. That's it. We've done 3 stories. And so if you look back and you think about season 4 so far, you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, those truck along pretty good. Like, there's not a lot of dead time. They're kind of moving. I remember those stories. Oh, the Vulcan story, that's pretty good, because in your brain you're kind of condensing it down and kind of forgetting about some of the stupid shit.
Yes.
Such as my favorite scene, which might be lazier or more like contrived than the hallway scene, which is T'Pau and Archer coming over the crest to see the Vulcan city. And T'Pau's like, I don't know how we're ever going to get into that council room. And then Archer's like, I think I have an idea. And then a scene later, they just show up at the front door in cloaks. They just got in a couple of robes and walked right in.
No, he called Cass, which I think makes less sense to me. He called T'Pau's husband. He called T'Pau's husband.
Oh, is that what he did?
That's what he did, yeah.
Oh, I must have missed the drop of that. But even still, like it.
I think it makes less sense. How did he contact him? How did he get in touch with him? Like,
Great question. Great question.
I would be more, they found some robes in the trash and just walked through. I'd be like, okay, well, that's whatever. But they found this guy, got him to give them the codes. Then they beamed in, and then Cass is like, now I'm going to get a divorce. This is all downhill from me.
Cass, this is Jonathan Archer. Do you have 2 human-sized quilts we could borrow real quick?
Don't ask what this is about. We're just saving your society costs.
I've got the spiky thing here. Yes, that one. Yep, that one. I know. Not a legend. It's real. And we just got to get in there. And if you got 2 cloaks we could borrow and just walk right up to the front door, that would be excellent.
Well, I've been trashing the Vulcans. I actually think the actor who plays Koss is fairly good at being a Vulcan.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good Vulcan. Yeah. I like that scene with him and T'Pol at the end.
Yeah, he does the correct repressing acting. Like, it's clear that he feels something, but the actor is not, goodbye, T'Pol. And then walks, you know,
right,
it's like there's a, he's trying to compose himself and does it as a Vulcan and then leaves, but you get the sense. And, you know, we haven't talked about it too much. I'm going to get to the end of the series a little bit unsure of what T'Pol was supposed to be as a character. I don't know what they're trying to do with her. I don't know if this is an actress meeting writing problem that they're having, but it seems that they're desperate to play T'Pol as a Vulcan who has trouble being a Vulcan, right? But they don't really comment on it. Like, beyond the fact that she just disbelieves everything, there's not, her entire arc of this Kir'Shara Syrannite thing is she's the doubtful one who kind of weirdly, even though she doesn't like the High Command, sides with the High Command over the Syrrannites for no reason, because they don't know anything about the Syrrannites and there's no reason to disagree with them about anything. But
it's a myth. No one will believe a myth. Not in this culture where we are super logical, but also for some reason have priests that do everything.
She questions the Katra, questions the Kir'Shara, questions why Archer knows literally everything about Vulcan history. T'Pol's still like, I'm not convinced about any of this. She didn't believe in time travel.
If Archer had just done some close-up card tricks, she would have been like, I believe now.
What do you think they were trying to do with T'Pol? What is T'Pol's character in this series?
In the series, I think the stuff you're talking about, it's tough to make a comment on that stuff from day one till now, because I don't think that was the intention. I think a lot of that stuff is late stage changes. I think T'Pol was good for the first 2 seasons or so. I always liked her portrayal. I thought it was really interesting because they were kind of, I don't think that it ever really felt like she was having a problem being a Vulcan. I think what they were having her do was basically be a Vulcan who is being exposed to this human culture, and how does that contrast and how does she change? But as we've said many times, instead of leaning into that and doing it in an interesting, organic way, they just jettisoned that out the window, got her hopped up on emotion balls, and now everything she is pivots from there. And the thing you're talking about with her in these episodes, I think, is also kind of strange and unfortunate, because what she's doing is essentially standing in for all of that stuff we're talking about they didn't do. Because instead of having these two sides actually have a debate or show the difference between these two ideologies, they don't get time to do that, because they have some ships they got to send out to Andoria, and then Trip's got to go and get them. So all they have left to do time-wise is have T'Pol be like, well, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so she becomes the skeptical one and takes the place of an opposing position. She doesn't have an opposing position. She's just skeptical of the Syrrannites.
Yes.
And so what you're left with is this weird, half-assed Dana Scully type thing, which doesn't work because that's not her character. That's not always been her character. She hasn't always been sure, she was skeptical of time travel, but even if you want to count that, that's like a late stage thing too.
Yeah.
So I think in these 3 episodes, unfortunately, her role is to kind of limp these ideas over the finish line without actually saying anything about them. It's just that she's skeptical of them.
She's the same as Archer. she has no drive in these episodes. They just have to walk from point A to point B. She just doesn't have something physical to carry, so she has to just carry this sort of like silly objection to what's going on. Like, and it's not even a strong enough objection to. She never causes a problem for Archer because of her objection, right? Like in her drive to think that she's right and this is irrational and that she should do something, she never causes a problem. She just mildly complains, really, the whole journey. You know, she's like, I don't think this is the best thing to do, but I'll follow you guys anyway down the hole. And that's been her experience for 3 episodes. It's just another case of not really having anything to say about those guys.
Well, I think what they did wrong, and I think it's actually kind of a simple fix. Obviously, 20 years on in retrospect, it's easy to say this, but I think they captured the wrong person. I think T'Pau should have been captured, because then what you've got is T'Pau and an Archer who's starting to lose his mind, who has to make a decision about what she's going to do. Is she going to try and shuffle this spiky thing over the goal line to the council and convince them that this is the right way to go? Or is she going to remain skeptical and be like, well, I just got to get Archer out of here so we can save his life? So now you've got her in a position where she has to make a decision. And this skeptical stuff that you've been laying on her actually has meaning, because now she has to kind of weigh all those things. And also on the other side of the coin, now you've got T'Pau in the council chamber with the other council guys, which opens you up to a conversation finally about what the opposing viewpoints is.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, well, okay, do I as T'Pau, do I go and do I save T'Pau? Do I believe the stuff that she was saying? My mother believed it. Do I believe this? What do I actually believe? I have to make a choice. And then, you know, when she gets there, she can be the one who kind of saves the day. But they don't do that. They just have her kind of get damsel in distress in this one, unfortunately.
Yeah. Should we talk about the Vulcan and Andorian conflict now, or is it more appropriate to talk about the Romulan aspect? Because I think the Romulans tie in what we're just. It's probably better to do the Romulans here. So
sure.
In the last episode, having not known anything except for the fact that a patron told us that the Romulans appear in this thing, I had sort of was pitching my idea of the Romulans have infiltrated the Vulcans, and that is how the show is going to explain that some of them are bad at controlling their emotions because they're undercover Romulans who are just not doing this well. Wouldn't have been a great fix, because no one in the show actually called this out, but it would have been a way to explain why some of the Vulcans seem weird. That's not the case here, and instead, the Romulans are just pulling strings in the background. And you don't get a really, like, the reason I found it annoying was because I thought that my idea, well, not better, but would have at least given a reason for the Romulans to be in the episode.
Sure.
And here it just feels like it's like, okay, the Romulans are there. Good, I guess. But they're all still Vulcan. And there's no exposing of that plot or anything like that. I don't know. I felt like that the Romulan ending here was just based on what people have been talking about, I think it gets a little bit more credit than it deserves for being something, because I don't think it's anything at all, really.
No, I don't think so either. It feels like a bit of a convenient tie-up. And also, like, how many episodes do we have left in the season?
Probably 9. I think there's 18.
9? Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Romulans probably don't show up again in the series, right?
I don't think they have a major plot in this series.
Yeah. So it feels like just kind of like a button for the sake of a button. And like I agree with you. If that was the plan, to be like, oh shit, the Romulans have infiltrated the Vulcans or whatever, I think that at least gives you some good story. But there you're hamstrung by the fact that no one's seen the fucking Vulcans. I mean the Romulans in the TOS stuff. So Archer can never see what a Romulan looks like.
Yes.
So you're kind of hamstrung by canon at that point.
That's true. I guess that I was thinking that, so to tie it into the Andorian thing, like if the Romulans are doing this and they have infiltrated and taken over, I understand their plot to cause war between the various planets, right? Like that kind of makes sense. What makes less sense to me is the Romulans pulling the strings and convincing real Vulcans of this danger. You know what I mean? Like if there was, if 50% of them were Romulans, I'd say, oh, they have the majority to do what they want in this culture, and that's why their government acts this way. But instead, they rely on, I'm assuming T. Vlas, or whatever this guy's name is a Vulcan. I don't understand why he goes along with it to the extent that he does when a infiltration, it must be the fact of what you're talking about, that they can't actually see Romulans, so they can't have them actually move into those positions on the board and take power, even though I think that's just a better way to explain everything that's happened in these seasons.
I think you're also, given what they say in that scene too, I think you're a little bit in a bit of a pickle narratively, because what the Romulan guy says is he makes a reference to reunification. Yes. And the Romulans and the Vulcans was part of that plan, starting a war with Andoria. Was that gonna?
Don't know how you gain. I don't know how you gain that advantage.
Was the idea if we start a war with Andoria, then the Romulans come in and save the day or something, and then they're like, hey, the Romulans aren't so bad. Maybe we should reunify with them or something. Like it's there's no. He just kind of shows up and drops a buzzword. It's like, oh, that Leonardo DiCaprio gif. He's doing the thing.
I know that from Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true. I guess the third leg of my, I completely agree with that. I don't think that their goal for reunification is never anything more than a buzzword, because they've said it in prior series. Yeah. So it's like, this is a Romulan goal.
I would like to pat myself on the back. I know Star Trek stuff. I know what reunification is. I can pull this stuff out of the hat. I almost won that quiz we did.
If only there had been more questions about season 4 of Enterprise.
Yes.
Final leg of my 3-legged stool upon which they should have set this trilogy. Mm-hmm. At least the Vulcans, this does not happen in the episode. This is complete speculation, but it's just whatever. If the Romulans infiltrate, right, the Command Council of Vulcan are Romulans. If you kidnap, as you were saying, T'Pau, there is a Romulan argument versus the Vulcan argument, which is actually something to talk about, because no series has ever talked about why the Romulans rejected Surak.
Sure.
There's so much to do there. There's so much of a disagreement about why clearly the Vulcans and Romulans don't like each other but do love each other as family. They truly feel like a family in some sense, because they disagree, but they kind of always want to try to reunify with each other.
Yeah.
It just would have given something to do. Just give them some argument to have. And I feel that the Romulan and Vulcan disagreement is something that some series could easily take advantage of. I feel like that's like fertile ground for some kind of season of Star Trek to explore.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised no one's ever done it, because I mean, there's been a lot of Star Trek.
There's been a lot of it, yeah.
And I mean, you could have done it in Discovery, but they obviously didn't. Yeah, I don't know if there's really, Strange New World could do it. They're the only people in the position where they could do it. No, they can't do it either, because they don't know what, unless you had an episode. Yeah, you can't really do it because they don't know what Romulans
They haven't seen the Romulans yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I guess that's gone. It's up to you, Prodigy. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to mention before we jump off the Vulcan thing. Did you notice that the priest that they brought in to pull Surak out of Archer's head looked exactly like Leonard Nimoy?
Yeah, he did.
Was that supposed to be like them being like, now they're normal Vulcans, because we get the one that looks like Nimoy here doing the priest stuff.
I was concerned because it feels like you're putting the soul of Surak into somebody, like a Supreme Court justice in the U.S. You want someone young who's going to be there for a while.
No, that guy. Yes.
Make sure someone's always around that he can mind meld.
He looked like Star Trek 2009 Leonard Nimoy, in which, unfortunately, was close to the end.
No, he's always going to need a buddy system so that when he starts to croak, he can just reach out and give Surak to somebody else and move on. Last thing about this episode, Vulcan and Andorian.
Sorry,
go ahead.
One other thing. How did it not end up in T'Pau?
I don't know.
What's the point of her? What is she doing there?
Sense.
If that's not what it ends up with, right?
She's a canon continuity connection.
Yeah, why not put it in her? It makes the perfect sense. I mean, if you want to get mythological about it, she tried it once. It didn't work because she wasn't ready or some shit. And now that she's completed her journey, now she's ready to take on the power and the mantle of leader of the Syrrannites and the Vulcan people. Not the guy you hired from the celebrity impersonator store. When did they change it to? When did they change it to live long and prosper
instead of peace and long life or whatever they say all the time? I don't know. I know that
once they open their first casino, then it becomes live long and prosper.
Early TNG, I think, is the first time. Maybe they do it in TOS where I like the call and response aspect of it, where someone says "live long and prosper" and the second person says "peace and long life." I like that sort of like there's a difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam.
About shalom. Andorians, Vulcans.
Yeah.
This is apparently the end of the arc for that. I don't have a lot to say about it. It doesn't feel super significant to me. Shran is good in this. Combs is always
he's
very
great.
good.
Talking about actors carrying things. Jeffrey Combs carrying this entire episode.
he was getting a lot of Theon Greyjoy torture scene energy off of this torture scene, though, because I'm not sure what this accomplishes for anybody. This is not a Garrick tortures Odo in DS9 sequence where Garrick is trying to prove his loyalty. Odo's trying to hide a secret, and Garrick eventually cracks Odo and learns something about Odo. Mm-hmm. No one learns anything about each other in this. It's just he tortures him for a little bit, and he's like, all right, just let him go. We'll get the hell out of here and see what goes on.
Is that not just an allegorical comment on the nature of enhanced interrogation during the Iraq War?
I suppose. I wish they had something to say.
In the end, what does it really bring but just pain, no actual actionable information?
Just pour that emotional water all over his face. Yeah, I just don't... I guess it's supposed to show that Shran and the Vulcans are getting along. Like, it's supposed to be a microcosm of the Andorians and Vulcans to learn to live with each other or something, but he didn't crack Soval, and Soval didn't beat Shran, really. Like, no gamesmanship was accomplished there. I just thought it was kind of a weak sequence. And then the Enterprise fighting the fleet never is like, whatever. I just, who cares about this stuff at that point?
Yeah. I thought Trip was good. I think Trip has been the underdog, or not the underdog, but the dark horse in these 3 episodes of really pulling weight and doing some good stuff. I thought him in command is very convincing. I think he's
learning to be a captain. He used to be scared of being the captain in previous seasons. But now he's
character development.
Yeah.
The only thing I have to say about the Vulcan and Andorian things, I feel like they've ended that like 4 times. I feel like every episode...
They say they had a peace treaty a year ago. They had a peace treaty in the last one,
Every episode they do with these two now, it ends with, well, at least we don't have to fight anymore. And then the next one is someone starting the fighting again. But I mean, hey, I guess that's like real life to an certain extent.
The Syrrannites are in control now. There's no more war with Andoria. Everything's going to be hunky-dory. We'll shut down the NSA, which is Pajem. We'll let Earth do what it wants to do. We embrace logic. I don't have anything else to say, so let's wrap it up. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to the show today. We finished the Vulcan Syrannite arc. It's called Kir'Shara. This is the name of the episode. If you enjoyed the content, patreon.com/the Penske File is always the place to go. A couple $2 a month to get extra stuff. We have a whole bunch of stuff coming out this month, including some Halloween specials. We got The Fly. There's the Friday the 13th part 10. Is it 10?
Jason X,
yeah.
Which is 10, but is also extreme because it's like 2001, I think, when this comes out.
Get your Red Bull ready. Control your heartbeat like a Vulcan and don't have a heart attack with liquid cocaine in a can. That's it. There's a whole bunch of podcasts. There's like 100+. Someone on Twitter asked me, what other shows do you have on Patreon? I'm interested in the Tombstone. And I couldn't fill the Twitter box. There were too many characters to say.
No way, baby.
No way.
You know, unfortunately, I think the one downfall to our Patreon episodes is they are not easily what's the word I'm looking for? It's more difficult than just going like, oh, we have Rotten Horror Picture Show Patreon episodes or Badass Patreon episodes, because a lot of them are just random movies and shit.
Yeah, it's random stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of a grab bag of fun stuff.
You can say it's probably 60% sci-fi, maybe.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
30% horror, and
way.
then some other stuff like that. Yeah. So if you're interested in sci-fi, but there's also westerns. We did Unforgiven and Tombstone and stuff. So
we've done so many. I have legitimately forgot about 30% of the things we've done just on Patreon.
Yeah, I forgot we did Source Code on there. Remember, I was looking at all the list of stuff. There's a whole bunch
I forgot you said Unforgiven until you just said it.
Yep.
And in my head, I was like, why the fuck did we do Unforgiven?
It's all out there. Enjoy. Patreon.com/DefenseCabal. And as always, our Captain tier supporters get a special thank you. So I say special thank you to Samuel Custer, Tarek Latif, Joint Mango, Andrew Chirlog, Kyle Barrett, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Christian Pouch, Bradley Howells, Michael Pond, Matt Cutler, Nick Sergey, Graham Santos, Sean, Bradley Killens, Dwayne Hackett, Darth Mosk, Vault 13 Hero, Kevin Reyes, Jordan Cooper, Russell Elledge, Stephen Minton, AJ28, Nick the Rat, Derek Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jake123, Point Extra G, Patrick Seba, Dave Davies, Johnny Franceschi, Captain Brazen, Eric Antoine, Jake Keys Gamer, Kevin Lowry, William Scheisler, Rayhan Jaffer, Soylent Blue, Zane Majors, Olivier Pardue, Dizbrada, Edmark Star, Retail, Grapple John Zorn, Tom Hickey, Jose Hunter, ZWNF Remixes, Captain McMunchausen, James McLennan, Beal, Jonas, Tommy Tango, Two Vicks Must Die, Chris McLaughlin, and Mutilated Puppet. Thank you very much, everybody, for supporting the show. Patreon comments now. If you're at the $5 and up tier, you can leave thoughts about upcoming Star Trek episodes. We read them. Let's go. There's 9 of them. Matt Ross says, Kir'Shara, the ending more than anything else makes this entire arc make no sense, in that the chaos is being made by the Romulans to destroy Vulcan to reunite with them. The best part is seeing Shran chew the scenery and interact with Soval, and as always, Combs dominates every scene he's in on the Enterprise. With the Enterprise getting its ass kicked yet again, and the sudden realization of who the evil people are, and yet again Archer telling the truth, I feel we're seeing the Xindi arc all over. Funniest line to me is Tucker saying that Vulcans will have to get through them first to get to the Andorians. Are you serious? 3 deja vus out of 5.
Yeah, he did
Thomas
have.
Darnell.
I did like Tripp's positioning, although I do think it was a bit of a bluff, because
oh yeah,
he's like, okay, it makes sense. All right, well, if they want to get the Andorians, they have to go through us. If they go through us, then that's going to start a war with Earth. I'm like, okay, that's good positioning, because Vulcans are allies. They don't want to get into a war with Earth. But then I was like, how many ships does Earth have? Like 2?
Yeah, I think they were building the second one, right?
Yeah, they've got one other NX class ship, and that's it. Unless they send like 1,500 Zephram Cochrane dicks after them.
I could see that. Just do have Worf yell ramming speed and then prepare to just crash into everything.
I don't know if there's that many 8-track versions of Magic Carpet Ride left to power that many ships.
Thomas Darnell says, Kir'Shara, so it's off to Andoria. Shran. Also, there's Romulans, I guess. I don't think everything gets tied up in the neat bow they think it does, but I get to split my time between Vulcan and Andorian ships with Soval on board, and 6 Semper Tyrannis, Velas. 5 out of 5. Okay. Kyle Barrett says, Kir'Shara, I cannot recognize the rhythm. He's written a song or something here. You're going to have to tell me. Maybe this is just pop culture that slipped me by. Who's been inciting war with Andoria? It's been the Romulans all along. Who's been turning Vulcans into Vulcans? It's been the Romulans all along.
It's Agatha all along from WandaVision.
Okay. There you go. And they killed Admiral Forrest, too. 5 out of 5.
Wow. Okay.
So I botched he botched the score there, but I botched the song. Latte Librarian says,
one of those closer to objectively true than the other.
Kir'Shara says, Kir'Shara from Latte Librarian, Trip makes a better and more compelling captain than Archer. I said what I said. 4 mystical holograms out of 5. Groppler John Zorn. How macho is Archer in this episode? Archer is so macho in this episode that when T'Pau asks if he has anything metallic, he whips out his dragon-hilted wyvern fantasy dagger that he bought at the LARP table outside the local gun show.
So I had my head down when that scene happened, and so I rewound it, and I assumed he was going to pull like a tricorder out or something. I was not expecting the late-night home shopping network dragon knife special.
Archer has that famous YouTube clip just banging the dagger on the table.
He's got his own. He's got his own YouTube channel of him just cutting watermelons with it.
Bakula moves and talks like he just doused his crotch in Axe body spray and thinks that's a good thing. Coincidentally, if you arrange the letters in Administrator Vlass, you get Dick Cheney's stunt double. A 2, I guess, and a pat on the head for trying. Royo says, Kir'Shara, what a huge difference Tucker is from the Xindi arc to this episode, where he's not portrayed as an incompetent boob or blabbing his personal disagreements in front of the rest of the crew, or ruthlessly condemning the people who just saved the ship. It's almost out of character for Tucker to be a professional. He hasn't set fire to engineering or blown up the warp core once this trilogy. In hindsight, it's interesting how far into the franchise we ended up knowing more. It's interesting how this far into the franchise we ended up knowing more about the Romulans and of Romulan society than we do of Vulcan society, and how distinct both cultures are. That said, my criticism of the trilogy is that it's rather silly that bringing the Vulcan 10 Commandments to the capital shouldn't really wrap everything up with a neat bow. It was, however, an interesting move to solve the out-of-character Vulcans of Enterprise by implying they've been puppets of a Romulan plots and thus were more Romulan-like. 4 out of 5.
Yeah, shouldn't the more logical Vulcans be like, actually, we should not cross church and state, so it should be illegal for that spiky thing to actually be displayed inside the Capitol.
They should throw that spiky thing in the Boston Harbor.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we brought up points that actually are why we would disagree with Royo's comments about it, or at least why I would disagree about the this being some sort of salvation for the Enterprise Vulcans. Point Extra G says, Kir'Shara, before we take our rightful place in the galaxy, we're going to have to fix everyone else's problems. This may be the best that Soval has ever come across, although with Vlass being totally crazy, it would make anyone seem rational. It's a pretty solidly put together story, but I'm not exactly sure what it tells us about the Vulcans. The Romulan reveal at the end really takes a lot out of this, and Vlass either being Romulan or at the very least a Romulan agent changes his motivations after the fact, and I don't think that it adds anything to the story.
Correct.
Yarpy says, I really like this 3-parter. If they'd shown Vlass to be a Romulan agent earlier, it would have put the whole 3-parter into a very different light in his characterization as well. I think this 3-parter really shows what the show could have been capable of if it looked like this from much earlier, or it would have gone to run the full 7 seasons. 4 IOUs out of 5 for Andorians.
Yeah, I do think if they had done the Romulan thing earlier, it probably would have... It might have set them on a clearer path at the very least, but it would have been more interesting, and it wouldn't just feel like a fan servicey button at the end.
Yeah, it's like you're saying. I honestly, canon just doesn't sit forefront of my mind, and I really watch this not realizing that they can't meet Romulans. Like it's a problem if they run into them, which is really, in retrospect, frustrating. Sort of like it's almost like don't even bother.
The thing is though, like, we can meet Romulans. The people in the show can't. So you can reveal that they are Romulans and have them do the things that they're doing under the guise of everybody thinks that they're Vulcans, and they're having...
I'm still here.
Was too hot. My take was too hot. Wes's camera just went off.
Let me do camera. Go. Can I not use another camera? Hold on a second.
Well, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, just keep talking.
Yeah, so like you could reveal that they're Romulans and have them do Romulan stuff and have that influence the story that's being told without anybody else learning that they are Romulans. So it's you can figure out a way to do it. It's just it might take a little bit of creative backflipping that hopefully doesn't feel too convoluted, but I think it would feel less convoluted than just plugging them in at the end and being like, it's actually these guys.
I'd agree. I think it's probably a factor of you can do that, but the implications for down the line canon issues, like if there had been a Romulan infiltration of the Vulcans, you are kind of setting the show up to be like, well, how did they resolve that? Because that clearly gets fixed in the future somehow, and you'd have to do it without Archer being aware of how it happens, which is it's something you'd have to think about. Last comment.
I would like to say I'm disappointed we don't have ready for this situation one of those goofy like technical difficulties signs that we can plug into your side of the thing with like a drunk cameraman or something.
Why can Riverside not let me change cameras while recording? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we're almost at the end. Brandon Howell says, Kir'Shara, it's nice to see Trip being competent for a change. Archer has saved Earth and Vulcan as well. I want to like this episode more than I do, but it would be a lot worse without Shran. Romulans in the Shadows reminds me of Future Guy. 4 Archer's This is a Knife out of 5. Thank you, patrons, for your comments in supporting the show. We appreciate you greatly. All right. Let's see here. We're just going to give our ratings. Do you want to go first? Do you want to go second here? To recap, I think I gave the other one a 2. You gave it a 3. I think you liked the first one, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's right.
I will give Trip a 4 because I thought he was great in this episode.
Sure.
I think I'm going to go 3 because I don't know if it's, I don't know. It just, I think it's we're in a tough spot where they're all very competently made and perfectly fine, but it's when you kind of like pull the lid off, you realize. So what are you going to do? 2?
No, I'm going to give this one a 3. I think the middle episode was the worst one out of all of them. This one feels just fine. Like it is tough because I think that it definitely has problems in the way that I would want to knock it down to a 2, but I think that like it's strangely only problems that have been with Enterprise from the start, so it's not like it's unique to this plot line of Vulcans. Like they didn't chance anything, so I don't think that they really even screwed anything up in terms of what the series is saying about Vulcans. I'll give it a 3, but it's a weak 3. I like the Augments arc better than this Vulcan arc. I'll say it again. I think it was more interesting to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, like I said, this is a box ticking episode, but that being said, they tick the boxes, right? Like everything they have to do to finish the story, they do. Whether or not it's the most satisfying way to do it is up for debate. But I don't think there's anything really inherently wrong with the structure of it or like the actual events that take place.
Yeah.
I just think it's a little underwhelming.
I was more engaged by this episode than the second one. I was pretty bored by the second episode. And this one, at least, like I felt like, I was watching something that was going to be happening.
I think I might actually be the opposite. I think I was less engaged by this one than the last one, just because it was like I could just see the checklist.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything that was interesting aside from a couple good performances and whatever they were doing with Trip. But it just, I don't know. It just felt really, really safe and down the middle to me.
Yeah. All right, that's it. We'll both give it a 3 for Kir'Shara. That's the end of the Vulcan Syrannite trilogy. We'll be on to the next episode, which I think is just a standalone, interestingly. It's Daedalus. That's how you pronounce that. It's like the Discovery episode, the Greek character.
It's Daedalus. It's not a pun. It's not DATA-LES.
No, it's not. It's not some Noonien Soong reappearance.
No.
So we'll be back with that episode. Thank you very much for supporting the show, everybody. Patreon.com/The File. Thank you for listening. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
Thank you for listening to the Badass Podcast. We are probably done by this point when this comes out, if I had to guess. We have finished Batman the Animated Series as it stands, and we'll be moving on to take a little bit of a break and then move on to Batman Beyond after that. And Rotten Horror Picture Show keeps trucking along, and Amanda and I are covering Friday the 13th on Patreon. We are into November at this point, I think. Mm-hmm. So that means last month with Wes, we did Jason X, as we mentioned before, and we will be doing Freddy versus Jason in November, which I'm very excited to talk about.
Sounds good. Everyone's got... Let me see if the camera comes back. I turned it back on. It overheated. That's the problem with this camera.
Oh.
But no, it's still missing. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, for supporting. Thank you for listening to everything on the Patreon. And I guess that's it. Enjoy all the Halloween content that'll be on the Patreon this month. I don't think I have anything else. Daedalus is the next episode to go. So we're ready for that. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you later.